Good evening, we the undersigned. This is Phil Monk here, founder of this little community activist group that we've got going on. Lou, can you do me a favour, love, and be logged on so you can tell me if anyone's in there asking questions.
Right.
Then we can do a bit of Q&A at the same time, because I'm on my phone and I can't see if anyone's watching or anything. I've no idea if anyone's watching. Oh, Rocky's there. Good evening, brother, hope you're well. As well as you can be anyway, you know, keep smiling. So Paula's there, so I can go live with Paula. Let's just press that button then. Bring Paula on camera. Oh wow, people on camera. Oh wow, that's fantastic. Right, it's new to me this. It's saying it's adding somebody. Paula Hipkiss, who I haven't spoken to for a very long time, was actually thinking of just today, wondering how you are, sister. I do hope you're well. Good evening, everybody. I can't actually keep track of everyone who's popping in.
Hey, Rachel.
So good evening, everybody. This is great. I'm going to keep waiting while people log on. If anyone's got any questions in the meantime, perhaps chuck in a few questions now. I hope everyone's managed to get there. Oh, Paula might be coming on with it. Hey, Paula, feel free if you don't want to be on this, right? Just press off by all means. Hello.
Hi,
you don't
just
have
thought I'd say hello to you.
That's very nice. I haven't heard from you for so long.
No, I've had it rough, but everything's going great now.
I can relate to that. Well, you can't see actually. It's in the dark, which that might be
It's
best.
a bit dark. Hello, love.
Yeah.
Hello, darling.
There you go. Get your face.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good.
Wow, so we can actually have interactive video calls. This
nice.
is great.
It's so nice to see you both.
Yeah, we have missed you. We have missed you.
You're doing all right.
Well, I shall be back on doing my little videos and things now.
Do what you can.
Yes.
Health first and family first. So all you can ever do is what you can do.
Exactly, yeah.
The main thing is keeping yourself well.
That's right.
Well,
okay, guys.
I'm going to let you get off that. I don't know how you actually get off it. Oh, there's an expert in there. Lots of love, Paul, and we'll speak soon. It's really good we can have interactive video calls. Take care, Paul.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah, it's excellent.
I'll see you later, guys.
See you soon. I wonder how many we can have. That's a question, isn't it? Right then. I mean, we've got 24 people watching and counting. We've got 3,230 odd members in WTU. So how many remains to be seen. So for those new to the group, actually, because we've had like 50 odd members in this last week, and members are coming in, trickling in thick and fast, really. You might not really know what WTU is all about. You may well have been having a scroll through and trying to see what we've been up to. Hi Patty, everything's as well as it can be when you live in constant pain and fear of the police smashing through your door and taking you off in chains. Apart from that, life's smashing. And I started WTU actually just about a year ago this month. It was after frustrations because we had lots of children in the news who were being denied cannabis to alleviate their epilepsy. You'll remember the children. We got Billy Caldwell, but we have little Alfie, and also I feel quite very much our very own Murray Gray, whose mom is also with us in WTU. Hi Joe, hi Ben. So I started WTU out of sheer frustration actually, because I've been using cannabis since I was 16 for mental and physical health reasons, although I didn't know it until 2014 that I was using it predominantly for my health. And I got fed up and got angry and decided to contact every human rights solicitor in the country to see if they would take on a human rights case, the broad spectrum case of human rights angle against the government for what we consider to be deceptions or misinformation at the very least. So I set about contacting solicitors. I actually invited other people from other groups, because I was just a member of other activist groups at that point. I asked them if they'd like to undersign to my letter, which is what now we have 3,200 odd people who have, in theory, undersigned to every letter that I send to every solicitor, police chief, constable, crime commissioner, and every other person I've been sending letters to for the last year. I've certainly been doing a lot more than writing to just solicitors, that's for sure. So, long story short, actually, it's taken 12 months, and today I've had a long-awaited phone call from a human rights solicitor. A very reputable firm, by the write-up on their website. I'm not revealing that at this point, but that will be out in the next couple of weeks because it will be done through crowd justice, so everything will be transparent. But at this point, I want to keep it under my hat because, well, there's lots of sinister shit happens in this world. So in a nutshell, this solicitor hasn't been able to fulfil his promise to call me for the last couple of weeks because he was called off for other urgent matters. I did in the end actually write back to him to express that, well, ours is an urgent matter because like little Murray had been taken back to hospital that weekend, and we've just had our good friend Ben Grout, a compassionate caregiver from down Cornwall way, Plymouth I believe, who has just had his house. It wasn't smashed in, thankfully. Actually, they were quite courteous in the way they went about entering his property, but they've still smashed up his equipment. And actually, by doing that, they've actually impacted on tens of people's lives because they've now taken from Ben what Ben would have been given to them to help them manage their health, because Ben helps people. So, you know, as is urgent, we've got people being ripped off by the police and risking prosecution, years in prison, losing their home, their family, their jobs, or losing their lives in hospital, or being like me and just living in constant pain and fear of arrest. So he actually definitely called me today, although it was a few minutes late and I was getting a bit anxious. I was relieved he has called, and we had a positive 45 minutes on the phone. Sorry, I've had a bong, so my chest's a bit tight. So, in a nutshell, he can't guarantee there's a case to be taken forward. What he is willing to do, and it's the first person that has been willing to do this, he's willing to have a look at what we would consider to be our case against the government. He was a bit hesitant about it being calling out any particular individuals for deceiving the public, shall we say, because it's quite difficult to actually prove all that. But still keen to challenge the law without it being about attacking specific, maybe dishonest MPs that have conflicted interests. So rather than making it an angle about that, just about challenging the law. So anyway, he's happy to look at our case. As I've said before, it's going to cost £5,000 for a basic review, which I don't personally see the point in, and up to £30,000 for the full comprehensive review, which, if you're going to do a job, let's do it properly in my mind, otherwise why bother doing a job? So I personally feel we should be pushing for the £30,000, which if a thousand, that's a third of our membership. If 1,000 of us put £30 in, that's £30,000. If all 3,000 odd of us put in £10 each, then we've got £30,000 to pay this solicitor. Now, as you will all have gathered by me, I don't want any money from this, which is why the PayPal and everything, I never have anything to do with money. And it will all be done through the Crowd Justice legal fees fundraiser platform. He has told me how he's going to contact them and start the ball rolling, because they will only act once there is a solicitor promised to work for you. So we now have a solicitor promised to work for us, which means we can now use Crowd Justice. So he's going to start the wheels turning on that today, tomorrow, this weekend. And then his recommendation was to keep this as a private fundraiser within our community group, well, we the undersigned, not even the wider Canna community as such at this point in time. The reason being for that, his belief is that by keeping it in our community group, one, it's very achievable actually. With the numbers we have already, we already make this an achievable figure. And also, we are only at the scoping exercise stage at this point. So let's just assume, and let's just assume for the best, that we're going to find the angle, that he's going to find a way to make a legal challenge to the current status quo. Let's assume that's found. Then obviously we need to fund a legal case, because that is going to cost even more money than a scoping exercise. And that would be the time he feels best, from his experience of previous fundraising, to raise it to the public. He referred to keeping your powder dry, because to me, this fundraiser has the potential to actually catch fire, to actually, as a fundraiser, who in this country that consumes cannabis or wants to, or has been prosecuted or affected in some way, wouldn't want to help fund this legal challenge. So his recommendation is to keep it private and within WTU for now. And then once we have that sorted and scoping exercises done, and then find a legal challenge to make the major fundraiser go mainstream with the media and the public, which that makes a lot of sense to me, because if we make it public at this point, then we've got to make another fundraiser with the public, and they might be less willing to support a second fundraiser. Whereas if we could have it round for the first one, that might well work better. Excuse me for a moment. I've had a sip of squash, and for some reason squash always gives me indigestion. But I am trying to give up cow's milk like a good little boy, because apparently cow's milk isn't good for me, which is a wounder. Anyway, I digress. So, long story short is, he hopes that within the next 2 weeks we will be able to launch the fundraiser. It's going to take a little while to get through everything sorted. I'll have to have like a conference call with the solicitor and the crowd justice team, because the wording has to be done right. I don't know quite what that means. So hopefully within the next 2 weeks, if all goes to plan, we're going to have this WTU fundraiser up and running. Obviously, as well as that, the case needs assembling, which I've never been after fame nor glory. So yeah, I would like some help with this, please. Some people have already offered to help to me in terms of research, and have already put things in, which is great news. If you have anything that you consider important research, philmonk@wtuhq.org is the email. It's very difficult to know which way to go, actually, I suppose. I have shared in the group a rough outline of areas that I've thought so far we should include. Obviously, I'm open to suggestions, and I would like people to come forward. I need things researching. I was thinking, like, let's look at California and all these other countries and find their statistics, and see if we can use those. Do we have a chance, do you think, you and Evans? Shit, man, that's one fuck of a question. I'm ever the optimist, actually, so yes, I think we got a chance. In my heart, in my gut tells me yes, actually. I phoned the police up and told them about myself, and I told them what I do, and they said I make a very convincing and compelling case. And so far, a year later, they're still leaving me in peace, because we do make a very convincing and compelling case. And when we look at the fact in Mexico now, it's a human right in Mexico. It's been deemed unconstitutional and against people's human rights to prevent them the opportunity to grow their own cannabis and do whatever they want with their own cannabis, because it actually denies people the development of personality. You are denied opportunity of expanding your consciousness and expanding your personality by only being allowed to use alcohol or nothing. So this is actually a denial of human rights, and in my humble opinion it expands to all substances, and everything should be regulated. But my fight hasn't ever been for all drugs. It's only ever been for the freedom to use cannabis, because, well, that's what my quality of life depends upon. So that's why it's become my fight, I suppose. But I do believe in the end of the war on drugs or prohibition. It's not a war on drugs, it's a war on people. So, but cannabis is my focus, and it seems that's how they did it in Mexico. Also, it's been deemed human rights in many other countries. So the question is, if it's a human right in Mexico, in Mexico now, shit, I've got no seeds. I could literally just get a seed out now, and so I've got seeds to give away. So I've got my bonsai tree here, and if I put a cannabis seed in that bonsai soil, when I say a bonsai tree, by the way, I actually mean a genuine bonsai tree that I've been working on in memory of well, my son Levi should have been a twin, but his twin didn't make it, unfortunately. So I've been looking after the tree actually for 12 years now, and I've just made it for the first time into a bonsai pot. But if I put a cannabis soil in there, I'm a criminal, which is ridiculous. It's absolutely ludicrous. Whereas in Mexico now, you can put a cannabis seed in soil in your home and grow your own cannabis seeds for your own use. So Mexicans now have more human rights than British people. Human rights know no boundaries. It doesn't matter which politician we've got in that house of liars down the road. United Nations law know no boundaries, no territories. We have a sovereign human right to freedom of consciousness, to the expression of identity, which means we should be able to walk down the street with things like this on and not be suffering attacks. So, you know, we've got the right to autonomy, and that is what is denied to us. Do Mexican human rights apply if you're Mexican in another country? That's an interesting question, actually. So if you're a Mexican living in the UK, can you grow cannabis because it's a human right in Mexico? Yeah. Arvin Jones, good evening, Arvin Jones. Thank you very much for joining us. I do feel quite privileged. It's been interesting coming to meet you, Arvin, as well, actually. And thank you for all the time you've always given myself and MCRC. So that's where we are. We have a chance. We have a solicitor that's willing to take the case. I will be raising the fact that obviously they've never had any foundation evidence for the Schedule 1 status of cannabis. They've been putting people in prison now. Well, I'm going to go from the year 1998, actually. The reason I'm going to choose the year 1998 is because in 1996 the British Government Department of Health commissioned a report into the therapeutic aspects of cannabinoids, and this report was performed or undertaken by a gentleman called Philip Robson, and he handed his report over to the government in 1998, and it was later published for the public in 2001. And now, in a nutshell, it's quite a hefty, great piece of research, but in a nutshell, Philip Robson reported to the government that herbal cannabis is remarkably therapeutic, which obviously it is, otherwise we wouldn't be all risking prison for using it. And then the second thing, and it's got historic use too, and the second thing that he pointed out was that all they needed really was time to develop marketable and profitable, patentable cannabis-based products. Part of that is for the ease of delivery, because obviously smoking is still frowned upon. But the report also then went on to recommend that they ceased the criminalisation of people such as myself and you good folks watching tonight, cease the criminalisation of people assuaging their symptoms with natural herbal cannabis. Now, the Houses of Lords, I think it was, and Parliament just ignored it, actually. On the very day they were handed that report, they ignored it. They ignored that recommendation. And that means it was a political decision to ignore the recommendation of the scientist who actually was considered expert enough to become the medical director for GW Pharmaceuticals. And that's where we're at now, actually. Now, I will mention the conflict of interest because, as many of us know, Theresa May is married to Philip May, who works for Capital Group, and they are affiliated with Monsanto and Bayer, and that all trickles down to GW Pharmaceuticals, that I think in their quarter was 400 billion was their profit stocks or something for just the quarter since November the 1st. So that's 400 billion, I'm sure that's what it was. I need to double check that figure because I do get muddled on some numbers. But anyway, you know, from that little report in 1998 where Philip Robson told the government, and it's been consecutive governments ever since, which is why we can't pinpoint it on one person really, they ignored it. And that's 21 years of prosecuting people on the basis and premise that cannabis is a Schedule 1 drug with no therapeutic value, and you should prosecute people to protect them from the potential harms of this. I'm not going to call it a drug. It's not a drug. It is a herb. It's a super nutritious herb that humanity has used for millennia, and the only reason we denied it is because of corrupt politicians and corrupt business people wanting to keep profits margins the way they have been. It all comes down to fuel, petroleum, coal, timber, cotton, pharmacy. And I know I might sound like a tinfoil hat wearing person, and to be honest, with that bowl patch I could do with a tinfoil hat. But the truth be known, this can all be documented and evidenced, actually. All the way back to when Prohibition started, it has always been based upon lies. And they come out with science and reports that are actually misrepresentations of the truth, or just pseudoscience. So since 1998, when the government, to me, in my mind, okay, they were told in 68, but I doubt there's anyone actually in government now that was kicking about in 1968. Whereas you can bet your bottom dollar, actually, that in 1998, people like the current Prime Minister and other people within Parliament on both sides of the parties, because you can bet your other bottom dollar, if you're lucky enough to have $2, because many of us aren't. It's pounds in this country, I know, but Trump's on his way. You know, sorry. It won't just be Tories invested in this bloody pharmaceutical company that's worth £400 billion every quarter. They don't give a flying monkeys. Keep it nice for the children. They don't care a jot, actually, whether it gets prescribed in the UK or not. So they don't care about the children that have been denied access to these remedies, because they're getting, their business investment is still getting to sell it globally for $400 billion every 3 months. But if someone grows it for themselves to take away their own epileptic seizures or their own pain, they're threatened with 14 years in prison, and they have their house smashed up, or their children take off them. Now that isn't right. So it means corporations can grow this seed that humanity's grown for millennia, and they can do it for profit. But we can't do it for relief. So that's what we want to challenge. And that's what WTU is going to challenge. So the scoping exercise will be getting done, I don't know, it depends how quickly we can raise £30,000. That sounds like a shed load of money. In the grand scheme of things, it's hardly anything. Between 3,238 members, I think our latest count was. We put a £10 in the pot each, and we can have it done. And then it basically comes down to how quick we can assemble the case and the evidence, the compelling evidence that we feel we need. So I feel like I've rambled on for ages. Are there any questions? Lou?
No.
Corporations with MP girlfriends. Yeah, you're right, Richard Gales. I'd be dead interested, actually, if we looked around the countries and see how many other conveniently placed parliamentaries in other countries also had spouses in highly placed industries. Yeah, it does certainly. Does a person with a UPA card get done for possession? I'm not sure, Wendy. If they have a prescription, then no, they won't get done for possession, because they've got a prescription exemplifying them from prohibition, and that would give them lawful permission to have cannabis, whatever form preparation it was determined to be prescribed for them. So no, I don't think they would once they've got their card. If it's backed up with a prescription from a GMC registered specialist, no, they won't get done for possession. Have you got the solicitor fees donation yet? No, about 2 weeks, Val Swinfen. Hopefully in 2 weeks, the solicitor said to me today. You know, I said I'm keen to get this up. We've got a community keen to go on this, and I don't want to lose momentum. So hopefully within 2 weeks it will be up. Believe me, I will let you all know when it's up and running, because well, I was going to say let's share the hell out of it and make it really public, but now I'm inclined to listen to the solicitor and say let's just do this in-house for now. Let's show our commitment to this cause as a little community group, right? Let's just pay for this scoping exercise. Let's believe we'll find the angle in, and then let's get the public to help us pay for the grand case, because that would need the whole kind of community behind it, not just us as a little tiny group. We could do that, Selena. I don't know. I wouldn't like to comment. Pro-corruption would only get medication from. Still get arrested for black market. Yeah, that's right. If ever you've got cannabis that isn't on prescription, currently under the current regime, you'll still be prosecuted under the Misuse of Drugs Act. Can we force Victoria Atkins to answer the question she avoided? I don't know, actually. It'd be nice to bring expert witnesses to the stand. I know there's a few that I would like to ask to join us. Obviously, once the fundraiser's all up and running, I will also be contacting other groups to consider joining. But it would be really good to get some specialist witness experts, such as Mike Barnes, maybe, I don't know if he would, Professor Nutt, and maybe some from further overseas as well. We've got to think big. Do not speak to the BBC, please. Fine. That works for me. Let's do this money talks, yeah. Sorry. I'm going to scroll through and see if anyone's got any questions, because if anyone wants to jump in. Mexican human rights. Yeah, 2015, Billy, 2015. It was actually ruled unconstitutional to deny people cannabis in Mexico. Earlier this year, I think it was, or late last year. it was actually ruled in the Mexican Supreme Court that it was against people's human rights, and it denied them the opportunity to develop their personality, and it denied them the right to self-determination. So in Mexico, cannabis is a human right. There wasn't arbitrary definition between recreational and medicinal, because let's face it, neither one exists. It's all beneficial to health, apart from for a minority of people. So, you know, if you're relieving your stress and your anxiety with cannabis instead of alcohol, then you're making a fundamental health choice, and that shouldn't be prosecutable. Member states, I'm just reading through messages here. Ben just comes mentioning that decriminalisation by the UN chiefs. Yeah, it's interesting the way the UN's going. You got half of it saying, oh, we need to clamp down on prohibition and double down on prohibition, and you got the other half of it saying that we need to end prohibition and end criminalisation. So I'm just trying to look through now. I can't really find any questions. I had an email from Extinction. They've received £200,000 since it started. Wow. So we have potential to raise huge funds to pay for this fee. And just to reassure you as well, the reason I've done it, or will do it, through the crowd justice thing is nothing's coming through my account. I don't want a penny of it. All I want is the freedom to grow my own cannabis without the fear of the police smashing my door down or being evicted. It's not too much to ask, really, is it? Would it be worth speaking to some herb and CBD suppliers that help make a WTU box? That would be worth it, Simon Edwards. I'm speaking with quite a few companies. There's a few that I need to chase up to. Between you and me, don't tell anybody else. I might hopefully be speaking at the Hemp Expo. It's not concrete. I've had a very nice chat with the two gentlemen that arranged it, and actually I was very reassured and refreshed by their take on things, because they're more about accessing the whole plant than just only CBD, actually, and they would like to bring more activism voice to the table. I hope I haven't just spoken out of turn, but it's dead exciting, actually, because WTU might well have a voice at the next event. So can we post it on our wall? I don't know. My gut here says not for the scoping exercise. Let's keep it within WTU and let's not advertise it publicly yet. Let's continue advertising the group publicly and increasing our group membership, and then people could join into the fundraiser through being in the group. But at the moment, no, we've got to keep it private within our closed group as it was originally intended, and then once we have the scoping exercise done, assuming that we manage to find the angle, then yeah, we're going to smash out all over our walls, over every platform we can possibly imagine, and try and get everyone that we can behind it. But just for the meantime, just keep it small within our group for now. I suppose the idea is the public might not get behind it twice, so let's just try and get them behind it the once and make it count. Yeah, 19th of September for the next Hemp Expo. Oh no, I've been corrected from the background by Lou, 14th and 15th, but I haven't got a clue, so you'll have to wait for their events calendar. But yeah, I'm hoping that I'm going to have a chance to express our stories.